NBA rule number 7, shot clock. Hi, Don Burrows traveling with you on the Basketball Coaches Road. It's 2024 as we record, so we must examine the 24-second shot clock. That's how it began in my mind, but as you will see, it turned into the Sean Kirst journey of the history, forgotten history, of the 24-second shot clock. But let's begin with the portion of the story every reporter, print back in the day or digital, seems to agree on. The shot clock saved the NBA with its installation in 1954. The NBA strategy in the early era had come to rely on inaction, delay game, hold the ball. It could start any time a team took a decent lead, no matter what the quarter was, or it could happen to hold the ball to keep an inferior team close. In 1949, the NBA had 18 teams. By 1954, it had been reduced by 50% to 9 teams. Primarily, it's believed, because of stalling, later in the century called the four corners delay game. Spread the floor. No shooting, just hold the ball or dribble it to work the clock. It was a plague on the pro game because fans despised the tedium of it. The shot clock took care of it. The history of the clock has been extensively covered over this past 70 years because its significance is clear. It's right there with Naismith nailing the first basket, even if randomly, at 10 feet, which accounts for the hundreds of reliable sources that arrive at some different conclusions of who was the clock inventor. Here's what I mean. Danny Biasone invented the shot clock by himself alone. I was at the meeting when he introduced it. He should get all the credit in the world for it. Red Auerbach, May 1992. The quote was reported by Sean Kirst of the Post-Standard in Syracuse, New York. I think Kirst is the objective authority on this story. He's covered it for several decades now, starting with one view and veering only where the truth took him. The quote from Auerbach has since been repeated many times. I've repeated it. This is the story I believed and that Kirst believed at the time, a 1992 feature for the local paper advocating Syracuse native Biasone be elected to the Hall of Fame for his solo invention of the 24-second shot clock. I had not studied this event, really, because I had heard bits and I had read pieces about the 24-second clock over the years, and I figured, I know the story. I thought, it's Red Auerbach. He was with the BAA when it was formed in 1946 as head coach of the Washington, D.C. Capitals. He posted the best record in the league. He saw the league renamed the NBA. He was active in the league for its first 70 years. And he was part of 16 Celtic NBA championships as coach, general manager, and executive. Those credentials scream, don't doubt Auerbach. In the year 2000, maybe because of the Sean Kirst story promoting Biasone, he is finally inducted into the Naismith. Dolph Schayes, who played for the Syracuse Nationals that Biasone owned, spoke on his behalf at the Hall of Fame ceremony. He broke down the shot clock equation eloquently, quickly, simply.
Danny Biasone, who was very persuasive, said, we need the clock, and the clock was put in. And Danny Biasone arrived at the 24-second clock with a very simple mathematical formula. A basketball game in the NBA of 48 minutes is 2,880 seconds. The average number of shots taken in the year before by NBA teams was 60 per team or 120 per game. You divide 2,880 by 120, voila, 24 seconds.
I had another mistaken memory, that being the full story of the lowest scoring game in NBA history. Final score, 19-18. My faulty memory was it sent Biasone into a deep depression at watching the fans leave early, and those who stayed were enraged at the boredom of stall ball. He went to a bar with some buddies, knocked down some drinks, did some box score research with newspapers that were just laying around the bar. And then he used cocktail napkins to write the equation. That's the equation Shea so easily recited. And then the shot clock went into use ASAP. So there it is for you. An easy story to tell. 1918 hold the ball game, plus infuriated fans, plus Auerbach's quote, plus Shea's at the Hall of Fame podium equals Biasone himself inventing the 24-second clock. Well, I'm wrong about that story, and I'm so glad I did not just tell it from my faulty memory or sporadic hearing of tales of the game. That story told, like all myths or sports legends, has some truth. Then it veers into what makes a simple, short, enjoyable story, which means it's not necessarily true. The true story, as writer Sean Kirst himself will discover and write about, it's more complicated than one quote. Hundreds of stories have been written about the twists and turns of the 24-second shot clock, which makes this fascinating, even if it is a bit longer in the telling. The 1918 game. That was in 1950, 4 years before the clock. Syracuse was not even playing. Biasone wasn't even there. Fort Wayne won a game by holding the ball versus the Minneapolis Lakers because the Lakers had a 6'10" scoring machine, George Mikan. Not a bad strategy, as double or triple teaming Mikan, that didn't stop him. But him permanently on defense, not allowed to touch the ball, that would stop him. But as all coaches are painfully aware, strategy, good strategy even, does not always equal fan entertainment. Next, I believe Auerbach, when he told Kirst, he was at the meeting introducing the shot clock. He would have been one of the honchos on an NBA competition meeting or an owners meeting in April 1954 when the presentation is made to the powers that be to implement it into the upcoming season. But it's not clear, as we shall see, who addressed the NBA committee that day about why it was needed, who did the research, and how the absolute numbers were crunched for the equation to equal the vital number of NBA rule number 7, the 24-second shot clock. Before we discuss, maybe even settle, that key point of contention, every report agrees that at that April meeting, it was voted yes to test the shot clock idea. See it in action before just jamming it into games because it looked good on paper. From a Sports Illustrated article, 2017. It's August 10th, 1954. And in Syracuse, New York, a collection of local college stars and Syracuse national players, that's from the NBA, who were in town, like Dolph Schayes, play a game to try the clock out at a Syracuse high school gymnasium. Then the article says it gets off to a slow start, but they settled into a rhythm. They even had a revision when Schayes, late in the shot clock, didn't have a shot, so he banged the ball off the backboard and got himself a new clock. They changed that rule to must hit the rim right there on the first rehearsal. Besides the players, refs, and clock keepers who were there at this game conditions trial run of the shot clock, SI reports owners and executives from Red Auerbach, yep, he was there. Biasone obviously was there, and Ferris. Ferris. Who is Ferris? He is Leo Ferris, and his executive basketball background and journey with the NBL and the NBA is short, brilliant, accomplished, and complicated. He had some high-level battles during his career. The biggest battle he had, no love lost, was with Auerbach, tracing Auerbach versus Ferris. They were on opposing sides of the BAA and the NBL. Both those leagues were fighting to rule pro basketball in the 1940s. It was a vicious fight. The BAA asked for a truce of sorts to keep market prices down, and I found these minutes of the May 1948 BAA meeting of owners at the Hotel Morrison in Chicago. Midway in the meeting, Podoloff, the BAA president, recessed it to go to the meeting room of the NBL in the Morris Hotel and advised Leo Ferris, chairman of the NBL, of the intention and desire of the BAA to conduct the joint draft with the NBL in accordance with the terms of an agreement entered into between both organizations. The BAA was advised by Mr. Ferris. The NBL would not conduct a joint draft with the BAA and would not comply with the terms of the agreement heretofore referred to. The BAA President Podoloff asks Mr. Ferris, would the members of the NBL honor the contracts of the BAA players already under contract? Mr. Ferris replied, a decision had not been reached at that time on this point. To me, no decision means no. Contracts won't be honored. If they want to sign BAA players, the NBL will do it. The NBL, through Ferris, is playing hardball. Players have to love this. There's not going to be a pro-draft monopoly. And Ferris, he's signing players he wants with no restrictions except for his budget. He subscribed to newspapers in almost every community in the country. He had a running file on almost every college player. He didn't want a draft to interfere with his system. He already knew what he wanted to do. The BAA was not happy, and Red Auerbach was a strong and competitive personality in the BAA. Already, Ferris has made some serious enemies. YouTube channel Golo found an Instagram account, and the owner of the account is a relative of Ferris's, a great-nephew, Christian Figueroa. Here's a portion. Red and Leo would periodically go at it during NBA Rules Committee meetings, in the press, and face-to-face. Instances like when Red went after the Syracuse Nationals organization in the press by calling them Bush League. There's much more on that Instagram account, but it's clear the two consistently irritated each other, neither wanting to give the other credit for most anything. In the early 1950s, that's an even playing field, equal administrative levels, each man has backers. Then, to get a little ahead of the story, but you need this background, Ferris left the league and sports in 1955. After 10 seasons, he goes into the real estate business. Meanwhile, from 1956 to 1966, Auerbach and the Celtics win 9 out of 10 world titles, thrusting Auerbach's power and recognition far beyond that of Ferris. For that matter, Auerbach and his victory cigar are prime rulers of the league, doing the most important thing, winning. When you win or have a lot of money, people listen to you. While Ferris leaves pro basketball at a young age, 37 years old, he was still with Biasone on the night or the nights of the equation development because he was general manager of Syracuse. Again, very much the equal of Auerbach. Ferris was on an NBA executive committee, according to club history reported by Syracuse Nats fandom. Another way to see this is through business hierarchy. Biasone, as owner of the Nats and the Eastwood Bowling Alley and Bar, is Ferris's boss. They meet frequently. Auerbach was not at these meetings, so he wouldn't know who assisted Biasone. Miss Karen Given wrote a story that featured Mr. Kirst in 2017 for WBUR, located deep in the green of Celtic territory in Boston. She writes, Leo Ferris, who loved mathematics, did the math, looking over box scores from games that had been hard-fought and exciting. He and Biasone counted an average of 120 shots, 60 by each team. It's not just newspapers piled on the bar or scattered about like in a waiting room at the dentist office. It appears as diligent box score research from several seasons past of close, entertaining games. Kirst is a witness of circumstantial evidence here. He says a colleague reporter mentor of his at the Post-Standard, Jack Andrews, a veteran basketball beat writer at the paper, often recalled, probably in newsroom chats, how Ferris would sit at Biasone's Eastwood Bowling Alley Bar, scribbling potential shot clock formulas onto a napkin. This appears that it's not one night in April 1954 and boom, an epiphany, I've got the formula. It's many nights probably over a few seasons since that 1950 stall ball game, that Biasone and Ferris are exchanging ideas, brainstorming, crunching numbers. Again, misgiven. It was Leo Ferris who took pen to napkin at the bowling alley bar. She is saying Ferris did the old school long form division while Biasone verbally contributed, but the memorializing of it as a written record, maybe initially on a cocktail napkin, is by the hand of Ferris. Misgiven. Leo Ferris, not Danny Biasone, presented the clock to the Rules Committee meeting. All of this is documented in old newspaper clippings. Predictably, I did find different conclusions in the media. From the New York Times, 1984, the year the shot clock turned 30 years old. Danny Biasone saved professional basketball when he came up with the idea of the 24-second shot clock. In April 1954, at the NBA's annual owners' meeting in New York, Biasone proposed a rule that would force each team to take a shot within 24 seconds of gaining possession. As I've said, Mr. Kirst is the scholar on this topic, the primary source in Miss Given's in-depth article. Kirst captured the 1992 Scoop Auerbach quote, but when he received a phone call from Mrs. Ferris challenging that story, saying she had proof her husband was a collaborator, he did not ignore it. He went and visited. He looked at the evidence. Quote, this thing really became more than just journalism for me back in 1992. It became a quest for justice, historic justice for this remarkable Ferris family that had been totally overlooked unfairly. By 2017, he's 25 years into his investigative quest. Kirst has rejected the Biasone did it alone quote he originally reported and completed a 180-degree turn on shot clock hidden history. I apologized to Mrs. Ferris on behalf of myself, and I apologized on behalf of all the basketball hierarchy that had forgotten her husband and had disregarded her. I said, you know, you're right, meaning Leo, her husband, was a shot clock collaborator. He continued, and we're going to do something about this, which he has done and is continuing over 30 years later. As for the 1954-55 season, NBA game scoring average shot up from 79 points per game to 93 points per game, to the delight of fans and therefore owners. Irony, Mikan retired prior to the 1954-55 season, so he never played with a shot clock. Probably wished he had had that protection from stalling against his massive talents. Irony number two, big year for Biasone and his Syracuse team. It won the NBA title 4-3 over Fort Wayne, the team that had held the ball in 1950 versus the now retired Mikan. Here are the closing seconds. Syracuse 6-foot guard George King was fouled. He hits a free throw. Syracuse leads by 1 point with 12 seconds to go. Fort Wayne looking for a game-winning shot.
With only seconds remaining, Andy Phillip pushed the ball up court, but as he tried to dish it off, George King.
Steal by King. And Syracuse wins the game 92-91 and the NBA title.
He won for their first NBA championship.
On the way to that title, Syracuse beat the Celtics in the second round 3-1. Sweet for Leo. But here's the championship picture. And he's not in it. This is Biasone, but there's no Ferris. In a microcosm of his basketball career, his credit for this title is missing from the picture, as he departed the league after Christmas on December 28th to go full-time real estate. That's just 3 months before the title win. At this point, I'm thinking, man, Ferris is the NBA version of Peter Best being replaced by Ringo, just as the Beatles become immortal. Ferris was vital in molding this team roster of talent that won the 1955 NBA title, the only title in Syracuse franchise history, moving to Philadelphia as the 76ers in 1963. Postscript. Leo Ferris has been nominated to the Naismith Hall of Fame at least 7 times, but has not yet been elected. He died in 1993 after a difficult 25-year illness, Huntington's disease. He was 76 years old. Biasone died in 1992, age 83. He was still running his bowling alley in the bar. Auerbach died in 2006, age 89. I feel I need to say a word on Red's behalf, a distinguished basketball man of great achievement. A line in his Hall of Fame biography perfectly describes him and his, at times, complicated persona. Despite his fierce nature, Auerbach was loved by his players and the league. The annual NBA Coach of the Year is awarded the Red Auerbach Trophy. There you have it, the more intricate story of how it became NBA rule number 7, shot clock. Biasone and Ferris, like Lennon and McCartney. So that did it. I figured I'm finished here. And then this. Hanging in Armory Square is a plaque honoring the creation of the clock. It reads, "It was Ferris and Biasone who devised a formula for the shot clock." But the plaque also credits another person, also identified in this SI article from 2017. That spring night at the Eastwood Bowling Alley, Biasone is there, Ferris is there, as was Emile Barboni. Who is Barboni? He was the 39-year-old head scout of the Syracuse Nationals. No college playing experience, no college coaching. Does Barboni deserve an assist? But that can only happen in hockey, 2 assists. You decide, because this investigation is over. For now, at least. Next post coming soon. Please subscribe. It's free for you and it helps me. Any ideas you have, you can leave a comment or my Gmail is in the credit. This is the Coach's Road, where basketball coaches travel, along with passionate hoop enthusiasts. Don Burrows, over and out.